Hi, I'm Maddie. Welcome to another of the Current's virtual sessions. Today we are sitting down with Jasper of the Turkish psychedelic folk band Altın Gün. Jasper, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me. Hi.
Yeah, so where are you currently located right now?
Amsterdam.
Yeah, how's it been in Amsterdam? What's been keeping you busy?
Well, yeah, we made a new record. We made a new album this
Mm-hmm.
last year. We're working on some new music already. Uh, yeah, we've been home a lot, just listening to music, trying to come up with new ideas. Yeah, we haven't been touring much. We still did 30 shows last year, which is quite a lot for these times, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing that I think has been kind of interesting about the past year is that doing this conversation where we're an ocean apart is kind of the same format as if someone was in the same city as I am right now, just because everything's been virtual. Have you gotten to
Mhm.
meet or work with any new people because of those kind of circumstances over the past year?
No, not really, not yet, but we're working on some collaborations.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, you can easily make music too online, and
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, we're definitely looking into that. It's a time of new insights and new ideas and ways of working together. Definitely.
You have an album coming out at the end of February next month. How was the recording process of that album compared to your past ones?
Um, well, normally we come together in a rehearsal space and we start jamming on like these Turkish traditional songs and try to make
Mm-hmm.
them our own. But this time, the first 3 months of the pandemic, we were just at home. We didn't see each other, and we just send each other ideas. Um, we had this Dropbox folder, and we just put ideas in there, and then we all tried to contribute to those. And a lot of those demos and ideas ended up on the album. We recorded a couple of songs together, but not as much as we did with the first two albums. But it
Mm-hmm.
was a really refreshing way of making music together, I think. And because of this way of working, it definitely sounds different than the first two albums, and I guess that can be a good thing.
One of the things I've loved about Elton Gun's music is that you guys settle into these grooves that feel so collaborative. Do you feel like the album was still able to like get into those kind of grooves while you were working remotely, or is it kind of more distinct, everyone working on their own things and then coming together at the end?
Yeah, both. There's a couple of songs on the new album also that we recorded almost live.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're more like a traditional approach. Um, so I guess those grooves are still there. But it's also interesting to see what you can do with electronic grooves and to see how you can still make them your own and still make them organic uh, and it's a interesting combination with these traditional Turkish songs. I think
Mm-hmm.
uh, we made them even more poppy than we with the first two albums. I think in a way, and I think it's very interesting to take pop music seriously in a way, uh, like making a folk song more poppy can be really refreshing in a way, and it's also a form of experiment. It's not it's not that we want to sell more records or something by making music more approachable or more poppy. It's just that we like pop music also. And I don't know. It's hard to explain, but yeah, I don't know. Just we kind of went with what we had and what was doable, and this is what came out.
Yeah, so you kind of mentioned this, but Altın Gün works with a lot of traditional Turkish folk songs. And within kind of like that genre of music, it sounds like there's a lot of Turkish bands in the 70s that had kind of been reimagining folk songs as well. How did you kind of get
Yeah,
introduced to that
yeah.
genre of music and decide you wanted to start working within it?
Uh, yeah, as a non-Turkish person, that
Mm-hmm.
music, I didn't grow up with it. It was uh, the first music I heard in this genre, like the Anatolian folk rock, was the album by Selda Bajan, which was reissued by the British Finders Keepers label like 10 years ago or something, I guess. And I just saw that in a record shop, and the cover looked interesting, so I bought it, and I really liked it. And then I went to Istanbul with my previous band and bought more records there, and kind of started collecting those songs. And then after a while, I thought like it's a shame that not a lot of bands seem to play these songs live, and there's not a lot of like interesting folk bands anymore that, at least for those Turkish songs. So, but I'm not Turkish, so I thought I can only do this if I find like the right people who understand these songs and who can sing them, and like it's. But yeah, I was very lucky to find Merve and Erdinch, who really liked the idea and were perfect for the band. But we never expected it to kind of take off like this. It was just
Mm-hmm.
it just came out of my passion for record collecting and looking for those rare Turkish folk rock. But yeah, it's very nice that we can travel the world with it now. Well, not
Mm-hmm.
now, but usually we do. Yeah.
Yeah. How does your process of sort of like finding new Turkish folk songs to reimagine go? Do other members of the band sort of already have some in their back pocket that they bring up, or are you doing more crate digging to find new folk songs to work with? What does that look like?
Yeah, both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's always either me or one of the two Turkish members who come up with the material,
Mm-hmm.
which in a way makes sense because yeah, the other ones they don't listen to Turkish music that much. Basically, they really like it though, but they're not like digging for more, or they didn't grow up with it. But like for instance, for this record, Merve, the girl, the female singer in the band, she already had her mindset on like a couple of songs that she really wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
for this album. And yeah, Erdinch also had some ideas. I had some ideas. So it's kind of yeah. So it's just us three.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I suggest something, but then they're like, "No, this is a really lame like wedding song or something." Like bands play at weddings or whatever. I don't understand the lyrics, so yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I always need them to approve those before we start working on
Mm-hmm.
new songs. Or sometimes they don't like the song, or they have different associations because they grew up with this music. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's mostly the melody and just I don't know, that appeals to me or not. But yeah. And also the sound of the words, that's
Mm-hmm.
also important. Even though I don't speak Turkish,
Mm-hmm.
the song can have like a nice rhythm, or like yeah, a certain flow or something that you like. Music is a universal language, but the
Mm-hmm.
lyrics are maybe not, but the rest of it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
interesting as a non-Turkish listener approaching your music. 'Cause I don't think the first few times I had heard your songs, I had any idea that they were derivatives of folk music, Turkish folk music, because it was something unfamiliar to me. For
Mhm.
people who haven't grown up with these songs and maybe aren't familiar with them, how much of the original folk song do you feel like you retain in your reimagining? Is it just the melody, the rhythms, or what do you add?
Well, it kind of depends. It's different with every song.
Mm-hmm.
Um, sometimes it's only the lyrics,
Mm-hmm.
almost like we change the melody a lot too sometimes. But there's also some songs that we also use kind of like the theme, like the saz theme. The saz is the Turkish string instrument that we use.
Mm-hmm.
We use that and the lyrics and the vocal melody. But most of these songs are like very old and
Mm-hmm.
written only on saz and with vocals. And sometimes there isn't even like an original version. It's just like hundreds of years old. So there's like all these different interpretations and versions. But I don't know, as long as it feels good, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we're closer to a version that already exists, and sometimes it's like something completely different. As long as it feels right to play to us. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that because I feel like the whole history of folk music is these songs being reimagined time and time again. And it's almost like we're in this moment where there's not, at least in American music, not as much of these reimagining of old songs. So it's really cool to see you guys doing that and finding ways to incorporate things like the Turkish instrument, the saz that you were talking about. Really cool stuff.
Mm.
I had read in an
Well,
interview with XOXO Mag that you kind of felt like you guys were really a band that was able to gain traction and success because of your live shows. How do you feel like that's changed within the past year?
uh, well, I guess we were forced to change that. There
Yeah.
weren't many live shows. Um, I don't know. I don't really know how people are gonna, if people are gonna like this album or not. Or there's
Mm-hmm.
gonna be a lot of people that are like, no, I like the more psych rock approach, and
Mm-hmm.
this is too poppy or too electronic for me or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, it's true. We started as a live band, as a project that was just playing live. When we
Mm-hmm.
started this band, we never intended to make an album or to do recordings or whatever. It was just to play this music live. But,
Mm-hmm.
the first album we recorded ourselves in a rehearsal space, and we didn't expect anything of it. But it,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, kind of kind of took off after that. And, like it isn't huge, but it's much bigger than we expected it ever to become. So yeah, I'm not sure how this. Yeah, it's interesting times for musicians and artists. You know, like,
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are reinventing themselves, or yeah, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Is there any element of like this new record that you're particularly excited to play when live shows eventually return?
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think it's going to be a very nice combination also with the songs of the first two albums, with uh, especially the more mellow songs of this new album. I'm very excited to play live because they might be less in your face than a lot of our old work, but it can be very intense. There's in a way there's more space and there's more subtle things, you know, that
Mm-hmm.
maybe you don't hear when you hear it the first time. But I don't know. I think it's yeah. I think the live shows are really gonna improve with these new songs.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time again to sit down. Altın Gün's going to have a couple of live tracks for us coming up next. Jasper, do you want to introduce those songs?
Yeah, I think it's first Kolbasti. We have
Mm-hmm.
Yuce Dag Basinda and Ordunun Dereleri.
damarı aksa, vermem seni ellere. Ordu üstüme kalsa, sürmeliyim aman. Vermem seni ellere, ordu üstüme kalsa, sürmeliyim aman. Aman, 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 aman. Oy Mehmet'im, Mehmet'im, sana küstüm demedim. Oy Mehmet'im, Mehmet'im, sana küstüm demedim. Beni sana geçmişler, vallahi ben demedim. Sürmeliyim aman. Beni sana geçmişler, vallahi ben demedim. Sürmeliyim aman. Aman, 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 aman. Ordunun dereleri karayosun bağlıyor. Ordunun dereleri karayosun bağlıyor. Kalk gidelim sevdiğim, anneme de ağlıyor. Sürmeliyim aman. Kalk gidelim sevdiğim, anneme de ağlıyor. Sürmeliyim aman. Oy Mehmet'im, Mehmet'im, sana küstüm demedim. Oy Mehmet'im, Mehmet'im, sana küstüm demedim. Beni sana geçmişler, vallahi ben demedim. Sürmeliyim aman. Beni sana geçmişler, vallahi ben demedim. Sürmeliyim aman. Aman, 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 aman.
That was just a couple live tracks with Altın Gün. Thank you so much to Jasper for sitting down and chatting with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to all of Altın Gün for joining us for this virtual session here on The Current. Thanks to our engineer, Peter Eklund, and our producers, Derek Stevens and Jesse Wiesa. And thank you to the members of Minnesota Public Radio for making this possible.